Commander Ethan Cole had served in the Terran Alliance military for 15 years. He had fought in many battles. He had seen death and destruction across the stars. He had lost friends and watched ships burn in the cold darkness of space. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for the message that arrived on his datapad that Cold Mooring. The war between humanity and the Valari Dominion had lasted for 20 years. Millions had died on both sides. Planets had been destroyed. Families had been torn apart. Everyone was tired of the fighting. Everyone wanted peace. And now, finally, the Valari had agreed to end the war, but their terms were strange. To seal the peace treaty, a high-ranking human officer would have to marry into the Valari royal family. It was an old custom among their people. Marriage meant trust. Marriage meant commitment. And the Terran Council, desperate to end the bloodshed, had agreed. They had chosen Ethan. He read the message 3 times before he believed it. His hand shook as he held the datapad. This was not what he had expected when he woke up that morning. He had expected another day of patrol duty. Another day of watching the border between human and Valari space. Instead, he had received orders that would change his entire life. His bride would be Lady Kira Villani. She was the youngest daughter of the Valari Emperor. The intelligence reports described her as quiet and unremarkable. Her older brothers and sisters were powerful and ambitious. They commanded fleets and controlled planets. Kira did none of these things. She was overlooked by her family. She was considered unimportant. That was why they were giving her to a human. Ethan stood on the observation deck of the Diplomatic ship Horizon as it traveled toward Velaris Prime. The planet grew larger in the viewport. It was beautiful in a strange way. The clouds were purple. The oceans were silver. The land masses glowed with the lights of 1,000 cities. This would be his new home. This alien world. These alien people. This alien wife. Captain Nina Brooks stood beside him. She was his commanding officer and his closest friend. They had served together for 10 years. She knew him better than anyone. You could refuse, Nina said. Her voice was soft but serious. No one would blame you. Ethan shook his head. And start the war again? Let more people die? He turned to look at her. I took an oath to protect humanity. If this is how I protect them, then this is what I will do. Nina sighed. She put her hand on his shoulder. Just remember who you are, Ethan. Do not let them change you. Do not let them break you. I will not, he promised. But even as he said the words, he was not sure he could keep them. The wedding ceremony took place in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace. Ethan had never seen anything so large or so beautiful. The walls were made of crystal that caught the light and scattered it in 1,000 colors. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadow. Thousands of Valari nobles filled the hall, watching with cold curiosity as the human walked to the altar. Ethan wore his formal military uniform. It was the finest thing he owned, but he felt shabby and small among all this alien beauty. The Valari around him were tall and elegant. Their skin was silver gray. Their eyes glowed with soft light. They moved with a grace that humans could never match. He felt very alone, and then he saw her. Lady Kira stood at the altar, waiting for him. She was smaller than he expected, smaller than most Valari. She wore robes of deep blue that flowed around her like water. Her hair was white as snow and fell past her shoulders. Her face was delicate, almost fragile looking, but her eyes were what caught his attention. They were bright purple, and when she looked at him, he saw something unexpected. Not fear, not anger, not disgust. He saw curiosity, and something else he could not name. The ceremony was long and complicated. Words were spoken in both languages. Ethan repeated the vows he had been taught, though he did not fully understand their meaning. There was a ritual where they exchanged energy signatures, pressing their palms together while strange lights swirled around them. It felt intimate in a way that made him uncomfortable, and then it was done. They were married. The reception that followed was even more overwhelming. Hundreds of Valari nobles wanted to meet the human who had married into the royal family. Some were polite. Some were curious. Some looked at him like he was an insect that had crawled into their food. Ethan smiled and nodded and said all the right things. He had been trained for this. 15 years in the military had taught him how to survive uncomfortable situations. But by the end of the night, he was exhausted. Kira stayed by his side through all of it. She did not speak much. She did not smile. But she was there, and somehow that made it easier. Finally, the reception ended. Servants led them to their chambers in the diplomatic wing of the palace. The rooms were large and beautiful, filled with alien furniture and strange art. But all Ethan could focus on was the door closing behind them. They were alone. He turned to face his new wife. He had prepared a small speech, something polite and reassuring, something that would make this strange situation a little less awkward. He would tell her that he respected her, that he would not force anything, that they could take their time getting to know each other. But before he could speak, Kira moved. She pressed something on her wrist, and suddenly the air around them shimmered. A soft humming filled the room. Ethan recognized the technology. It was a privacy field. It would block all listening devices and cameras. "We can speak freely now," Kira said. Her voice was different, strong, clear, confident, nothing like the quiet, meek princes the reports had described. Ethan stared at her. "What is going on?" Kira looked at him with those bright purple eyes. "Everything you think you know about this marriage is wrong, Commander Cole. I am not the weak, unimportant princess they told you about. And this marriage is not what you think it is." She stepped closer to him. "I requested this marriage. I asked for you specifically. And I did it because I need your help to save both our peoples from destruction." Ethan felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Everything he had prepared for, everything he had expected, was suddenly meaningless. "I think you better explain," he said. Kira smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile, and it changed her entire face. She no longer looked fragile. She looked dangerous. "Sit down, Commander," she said. "This is going to take a while." Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed. His mind was racing. The quiet princess he had expected to spend his life with had vanished. In her place stood a woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence. He did not know what to think. Kira moved to the wall and pressed her hand against a hidden panel. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a portable computer terminal. She activated it, and suddenly the room filled with floating images. Star maps, fleet positions, military communications, secret documents. Ethan recognized some of the information immediately. These were Valari military secrets, the kind of secrets that intelligence officers would kill for. "How do you have this?" he asked. Kira turned to face him. "My father, the Emperor, is dying. He has maybe 6 months left to live. The doctors cannot save him. When he dies, my eldest brother Varric will take the throne." She paused, and Ethan saw something dark cross her face. "Varric does not want peace with humanity," she continued. "He never did. He hates your people. He believes the Valari are superior to all other species. He thinks humans are nothing more than animals that need to be put down." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "But the peace treaty was his idea," Kira finished. "He convinced our father to sign it. But not because he wants peace. He wants humanity to lower its guard, to pull back its fleets, to stop building weapons. And when you are weak and unprepared, he will attack. She gestured at the floating images around them. This is the evidence. Troop movements to strategic positions near human space. Weapons factories working day and night. Secret alliances with other species who hate humanity. Varak has been planning this for years. The war that is coming will make the last 20 years look like nothing. Ethan stood up and walked through the holographic displays. The evidence was overwhelming. If even half of this was true, humanity was in terrible danger. Why are you telling me this? He asked. You are Valari. These are your people. Your family. Kira's expression hardened. My people have done terrible things in this war. So have yours. But there are good people on both sides. People who just want to live their lives in peace. People who do not deserve to die because of my brother's hatred. She stepped closer to Ethan. I have spent my entire life being ignored. My brothers think I am weak. My father barely knows my name. But I use that to my advantage. Nobody watches the weak princess. Nobody suspects her of anything. So I built a network. I gathered allies. I collected information. I prepared for this moment. This moment? Ethan asked. The moment when I could do something, Kira said. I chose you, Commander Cole, because I read your file. I know your history. You are honorable. You are skilled. And you care about your people. I need a partner who will fight beside me. Not a puppet. Not a fool. A real partner. Ethan studied her face. He was trained to spot lies. To read people. To see through deception. But all he saw in Kira's eyes was determination and truth. What exactly do you want to do? He asked. Stop my brother. Kira said simply. We expose his plans before he can act. We remove his supporters from positions of power. We make sure that when my father dies, Varek does not take the throne. And who does take the throne? Kira hesitated for just a moment. If necessary, I do. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You want to become Empress? I want to prevent a war, Kira said. I never cared about power. I still do not. But I will not stand by and watch my brother destroy everything. If becoming Empress is what it takes, then that is what I will do. There was a long silence. Ethan looked at the evidence floating around him. He thought about his crew, his friends, his family back on Earth. He thought about what would happen if Varek succeeded. Then he made his decision. All right, he said. I will help you. Relief flooded Kira's face. For a moment, she looked young and vulnerable again. Thank you. Ethan held up his hand. But we do this together. Equal partners. You do not keep secrets from me. You do not make decisions without telling me. If we are going to commit treason against the Valari Empire, we need to trust each other completely. A small smile crossed Kira's lips. Treason. I suppose that is what this is. Very well, Commander. Equal partners. Call me Ethan, he said. If we are going to be treasonous partners, we should at least use first names. Kira laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. It surprised them both. Very well, Ethan. Then you may call me Kira. She extended her hand in the human gesture she had clearly studied. Now, shall we begin planning how to save two civilizations? He took her hand and shook it. Her grip was firm and steady. That night, they sat together for hours. Kira showed him everything she had gathered. Intelligence reports, communication intercepts, lists of loyal officers and corrupt officials. The scope of her work was incredible. She had been preparing for this for years. Ethan, in turn, told her about the Terran Alliance, its strengths and weaknesses, the political factions that would support them, the military leaders who could be trusted, information that would help her network work more effectively with human allies. As the night wore on, Ethan found himself looking at Kira with new eyes. She was brilliant, brave. She had risked everything on a desperate plan to prevent a war. And she had trusted him, a human stranger, with her secrets. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Kira looked up from the data she was reviewing. "Of course. Why did you choose me specifically?" There must have been other officers. Other humans who could have helped. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I read about the Battle of Proxima. How you held your position for 3 days against overwhelming odds. How you refused to abandon your crew, even when command ordered you to retreat. How you saved 400 people who would have died if you had followed orders." She met his eyes. "I needed someone who would not give up. Someone who would fight for what was right, even when it was hard. Someone who understood that some things are worth any price." Ethan did not know what to say. The Battle of Proxima was something he rarely talked about. The decisions he made there still haunted him. "I was just doing my duty," he said finally. "No," Kira said softly. "You were being exactly the kind of person I needed. And I was right to choose you." They stared at each other in the dim light of the holographic displays. Something passed between them in that moment. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something. Understanding, respect, connection. "We should get some sleep," Kira said finally. "Tomorrow we start the real work." Ethan nodded. But as he lay in the darkness that night, listening to Kira's quiet breathing from across the room, he knew that everything had changed. He had come to Velaris Prime expecting to spend his life as a political prisoner. Instead, he had found something else entirely. A purpose. A partner. And perhaps, in time, something more. The weeks that followed were a careful game of deception. Every day, Ethan and Kira wore masks. In public, they played the roles everyone expected them to play. Ethan pretended to be the confused human husband. He acted slightly overwhelmed by Valari customs. He made small mistakes at formal dinners. He asked obvious questions about things he already knew. He let people think he was simple and harmless. Kira continued to be the quiet princess. She spoke softly. She stayed in the background. She let her brothers and sisters take all the attention. Nobody suspected that the overlooked youngest child was planning to overthrow the heir to the throne. But in private, behind the privacy fields in their chambers, they were building a revolution. Kira introduced Ethan to her network one by one. First was Admiral Soren Talvik. He was an old warrior with silver scars on his face and tired eyes. He had fought humans for 30 years. He had killed thousands of them. And he had grown sick of it. "I have seen too much death," Talvik told Ethan when they first met. "I used to believe we were fighting for our survival. Now I know we were fighting for nothing. Just pride and hatred and fear." He clasped Ethan's hand in the human way. "If Lady Kira says you can be trusted, then I trust you. Let us end this before more young soldiers die for old men's ambitions." Next was Minister Lyra Venn. She controlled the Imperial Treasury. For years, she had been quietly redirecting funds away from Varek's secret weapons projects, buying time, slowing his preparations. "The economy cannot survive another war," she explained. "Varek does not care. He thinks glory is worth any price. But there are those of us who remember what we lost last time." Then there was Commander Dax Wren. He was young, barely older than Ethan, and he led a group of junior officers who shared his beliefs. They had grown up during the war. They had lost friends and family. They wanted something different for the future. "My generation does not hate humans," Wren told him. "We do not even know any humans. We only know the stories our parents told us. Maybe those stories are true. Maybe they are not. I would like the chance to find out." These were the people who would stand with them when the time came. But they needed more than Valari support. They needed the Terran Alliance to be ready. Ethan established a secret communication channel with Captain Nina Brooks. The Horizon was still in orbit, officially as part of the diplomatic delegation. Nina was the only person he trusted enough to bring into the plan. At first, she was skeptical. "Ethan, this could be a trap," she said through the encrypted connection. "How do you know she's not playing you?" "Because I have seen the evidence," Ethan replied. "And because I know her now. She is not pretending, Nina. She is the real thing." There was a long pause. "You have feelings for her." Ethan did not answer right away. He looked across the room at Kira, who was reviewing intelligence reports with fierce concentration. Her white hair fell across her face. Her purple eyes moved quickly as she read. "Just send the evidence to Admiral Pearson," he said finally. "Let him decide what to do with it." Nina sighed. "Fine, but be careful, Ethan. If this goes wrong, I know the risks. Do you?" Her voice softened. "You are not just gathering intelligence anymore. You are becoming part of something. I can hear it when you talk about her." Ethan ended the communication without responding. Because Nina was right, and he did not know how to explain what he was feeling. The marriage had been forced on him. A political arrangement. A sacrifice for peace. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. He found himself looking forward to their late-night planning sessions. He liked the way Kira thought through problems, turning them over and examining them from every angle. He liked her dark humor, the jokes she made when things seemed hopeless. He liked how she never gave up. No matter how difficult things became. It was complicated. It was unexpected. And it was undeniably real. Their first real test came 3 weeks after the wedding. Varek summoned them to a private dinner at his personal estate. "He suspects something," Kira said as they prepared to leave. "Not the full truth, but he knows I am not as harmless as I seem." Ethan adjusted his formal jacket. "Then we convince him otherwise. I will be the simple human who does not understand your customs. You will be the patient wife dealing with her inferior husband. We give him what he expects to see." Kira studied him with something like admiration. "You are better at this than I expected." 15 years in the military, Ethan said with a slight smile. "You learn to adapt." Varek's estate was a fortress disguised as a palace. Armed guards stood at every entrance. Security systems watched every corner. This was not the home of a prince. It was the headquarters of a future tyrant. Varek himself was everything Ethan expected. Tall and powerful, with cold eyes and a cruel smile. He welcomed them like a gracious host, but Ethan could feel the predator underneath the polite surface. The dinner was a test. Varek asked Ethan questions designed to make him look foolish. He made comments about human weakness. He told stories about battles where Valari forces had slaughtered human ships. Ethan smiled and nodded and pretended not to understand the insults. He played the role of the ignorant human perfectly. Beside him, Kira was equally flawless. She apologized for her husband's confusion. She explained human customs to him like he was a child. She acted embarrassed by his presence. By the end of the dinner, Varek seemed satisfied. His suspicions had faded. The weak sister and her pathetic human husband were exactly what he had expected them to be. As they left the estate, Varek called out to Kira, "Take care of your pet, little sister. Humans are fragile creatures. It would be a shame if something happened to him before the treaty is fully implemented." The threat was clear. But Kira's face showed nothing but submission. "Of course, brother. I will keep him safe." In the transport back to the palace, neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Kira said quietly, "I will not let him hurt you." Ethan looked at her. Her hands were clenched in her lap. Her jaw was tight with anger. "I know," he said. Then, because it felt right, he reached over and took her hand. And I will not let him hurt you either. Kira's fingers intertwined with his. She did not pull away. He has to be stopped, she said. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, Ethan agreed. They sat in silence for the rest of the journey, holding hands in the darkness of the transport. Something had shifted between them. They were no longer just political partners. They were no longer just fellow conspirators. They were something more. Something neither of them had expected to find. When they returned to their chambers, Kira turned to him. Her purple eyes were bright with emotion. Ethan, she said, I need you to know something. Whatever happens, whatever my brother does, I am glad you are here. I am glad I chose you. Ethan reached out and brushed a strand of white hair from her face. So am I. For a long moment, they stood close together, barely breathing. Then Kira stepped back. We should rest, she said. Tomorrow, there is more work to do. Yes, Ethan agreed. Tomorrow. But as he lay awake that night, he knew that everything between them had changed. And he knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that he would do anything to protect her. Anything at all. The Emperor died on a cold night in the season of Valari called the Fading. Kira received the news from a palace servant who knocked on their chamber door just before dawn. Her father was gone out in public. She showed nothing. She dressed in the white robes of mourning. She attended the ceremonies with a calm face. She accepted condolences from nobles who had barely known she existed. But when they were alone, she wept. Ethan held her through the night while she cried. He did not try to offer words of comfort. There were no words that could help. He simply stayed with her, his arms wrapped around her, letting her know she was not alone. He never really saw me, Kira said between sobs. He never knew who I was. And now he never will. I see you, Ethan said softly. I know who you are. Kira looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. In that moment, she was not the brilliant strategist or the secret revolutionary. She was just a daughter who had lost her father. Thank you, she whispered, for being here. The next morning, everything changed. Varric announced that his coronation would take place in 10 days. 10 days until he officially became emperor. 10 days until he could begin moving against humanity openly. Kira called an emergency meeting of their inner circle. Admiral Talvek, Minister Ven, Commander Ren, and 3 other trusted allies gathered in a secure location beneath the palace. We are out of time, Talvek said. His face was grim. Our forces are positioned, but we needed at least another month to secure all the key military installations. We do not have a month, Minister Ven replied. Once Varric is crowned, his first act will be to remove anyone he does not trust. Everyone in this room will be dead within a week. The room fell silent. Ethan looked at Kira. She was thinking, her eyes distant, her mind working through possibilities. There is another option, she said finally. Everyone turned to look at her. The right of challenge. A murmur ran through the group. Commander Ren shook his head. That has not been used in 300 years. But it is still law, Kira said. Any member of the royal family can challenge for the throne before a coronation is complete. The challenge is decided by combat. Admiral Talvik's expression was pained. My lady, with respect, Varric is one of the finest warriors in the Dominion. If you challenge him, you will die. I did not say I would be the one fighting. All eyes in the room turned to Ethan. He understood immediately. You want me to be your champion? Kira nodded. The challenger can name a champion to fight in their place. It is rare, but there is precedent. A human champion, Minister Ven said slowly. That would be unprecedented. Exactly, Kira said. Varric would have to accept the challenge or forfeit his claim to the throne. His pride would never let him forfeit. He would fight. And he would expect to win, Ethan added, seeing where this was going. Because he thinks humans are weak. Yes, Kira met his eyes. But you are not weak, Ethan. You are one of the most capable warriors humanity has ever produced. And Varric has never fought a human. He does not know what you can do. The room erupted in debate. Some thought it was brilliant. Others thought it was suicide. The arguments went back and forth. Through it all, Ethan was silent. He was thinking about the Valari combat techniques he had studied. They were skilled but predictable, based on ancient traditions. Human combat training was different. It was brutal, practical, designed to work against any opponent. No matter how strong, it was risky. But it might work. I will do it, he said. The room went quiet. Kira crossed to stand in front of him. Are you certain? If you lose, we lose everything. Including. She did not finish. Including you, Ethan said. I know. He took her hands in his. But I have watched you risk everything for this cause. For your people. For mine, let me do this. Let me fight for you. There were tears in Kira's eyes, but she blinked them away. You stubborn, impossible human. That is Commander Stubborn Impossible Human to you. Despite everything, she laughed. The days before the coronation became a blur of preparation. Ethan trained constantly. Commander Wren and other loyalists showed him Varric's fighting style. They sparred with him for hours, teaching him to recognize the patterns and forms of Valari combat. Kira was at his side through all of it. She watched every training session. She pointed out weaknesses. She pushed him to be better. At night, she helped him review recordings of Varric's past fights. They studied his movements together, looking for any advantage. He favors his right side, Ethan noted during one session. Yes, Kira agreed. An old injury from a duel 10 years ago. He compensates well, but under pressure, he protects it. Good. That is something I can use. On the night before the challenge, they sat together in their chambers. The privacy field hummed around them. Outside, the palace was preparing for the coronation. But in here, there was only the two of them. I never thanked you properly, Kira said, for believing in me when no one else did. Ethan turned to look at her. In the soft light, she was beautiful. Not in the cold, alien way of the Valari nobles, but in a real way. A human way, despite her silver skin and purple eyes. You did not need me to believe in you, he said. You knew who you were long before I arrived. I am just grateful you let me stand beside you. Kira moved closer. Her hand came up to touch his face. Tomorrow, you will fight for my throne. You might die for it. I know. Why? She asked. You did not choose this. You were forced into this marriage. You could have just waited out your time here. You did not have to become part of my fight. Ethan covered her hand with his own. Because somewhere along the way, your fight became my fight. Because what happens to your people matters to me now. Because... He paused, searching for the right words. Because I care about you, Kira, more than I expected to. More than I probably should. Kira's breath caught. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, gentle, but it quickly became something more. Months of tension and fear and longing poured out between them. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. I care about you too, Kira whispered. I did not plan to. It just happened. Ethan smiled. The best things usually happen that way. She kissed him again. And for one night, they forgot about politics and war and the battle to come. They were just two people who had found each other against all odds. When dawn came, Ethan felt different, stronger, more certain. He had something to fight for now. Someone to come back to. Are you ready? Kira asked as he prepared to leave for the arena. Ethan looked at her. His wife, his partner, his love. Now I am, he said. The grand arena of Valorous Prime was ancient. It had been built thousands of years ago for exactly this purpose. The stone seats rose high toward a domed ceiling that opened to the purple sky above. Today, every seat was filled. The citizens of the Dominion had come to witness history. A human fighting for the Valari throne. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Varric stood at one end of the combat floor. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed in the light. In his hand, he held a plasma blade, the traditional weapon of royal duels. The blade hummed with deadly energy. He looked confident, amused even. To him, this was not a real challenge. It was just a chance to kill a human in front of his entire empire. Ethan stood at the other end of the arena. He wore a modified combat suit that Captain Nina Brooks had smuggled to him from the horizon. It was the best the Terran military had. Designed for close combat against stronger enemies. In his hands, he held twin fighting blades. They were Valari in design, but weighted for human use. Commander Wren had helped him choose them. Above the arena, on the Challenger's platform, Kira stood in robes of imperial gold. Her voice carried across the silent crowd as she spoke the ancient words. I, Kira of House Valani, invoke my blood right to challenge for the throne. I name Commander Ethan Cole of Terra as my champion. Let combat decide the worthy ruler. The crowd roared. Some shouted in anger. A human had no right to stand where only Valari had stood for millennia. Others cheered in excitement. This was something new, something unprecedented. And some, those who knew what was truly at stake, watched in silent hope. Varric stepped forward. His voice was loud and mocking. A human champion. How fitting that my pathetic sister would choose such a weak creature to fight for her. I will enjoy breaking him. Ethan said nothing. Words before battle were just noise. He settled into his fighting stance and waited. The signal sounded. Varric attacked immediately. He was fast. Faster than Ethan had expected. The plasma blade swept toward his head in a blur of light, but Ethan was already moving. He ducked under the strike and countered with his own blade. Varric barely managed to deflect it. They broke apart, circling each other. You are quicker than I expected, Varric admitted. But speed will not save you. He attacked again. A furious combination of strikes that drove Ethan back across the arena. The plasma blade came within inches of his face, his chest, his legs. Each time, Ethan barely managed to deflect or dodge. The crowd cheered with each near miss. They could smell blood, but Ethan was not worried. He was learning. Varric was powerful. His technique was excellent, but it was also predictable. Every attack followed the traditional forms, the ancient patterns that had been drilled into him since childhood. Terran combat training had no such elegance. It only cared about one thing: winning. Varric came in with another downward strike. Ethan caught it on his cross blades, absorbing the impact through his whole body. Then he drove his knee into Varric's stomach. It was not a move that existed in Valari combat. Varric doubled over, shocked and gasping. Ethan did not give him time to recover. He attacked without mercy. His blades struck from angles that made no sense in traditional fighting. High then low, left then right. Combinations designed to confuse and overwhelm. Varric was forced to abandon his training and simply survive. The confident prince was gone. In his place was a desperate man fighting for his life. The tide had turned, but Varric was still dangerous. With a roar of fury, he lashed out wildly. His plasma blade caught Ethan across the shoulder, burning through his suit and into the flesh beneath. Pain exploded through Ethan's arm. He staggered backward, clutching the wound. Varric pressed forward, his confidence returning. You see? In the end, humans are nothing. Weak. Fragile. Waiting to be broken. Ethan looked up at the Challenger's platform. Kira stood there, her hands gripping the railing, her face pale with fear. Behind her, the purple sky of Valaris Prime stretched to the horizon. He thought about everything they had been through. The late nights of planning. The whispered conversations. The moment she had first kissed him. He thought about what would happen if he lost. Varric would take the throne. He would start his war. Millions would die. Kira would die. No. He would not let that happen. With a cry that came from somewhere deep inside him, Ethan surged forward. He ignored the pain in his shoulder. He ignored the blood running down his arm. He ignored everything except the enemy in front of him. Varric swung his plasma blade in a desperate arc. Ethan let it pass over his head, missing by inches. Then he stepped inside Varric's guard, too close for the longer weapon to be effective, and he drove both his blades into the gaps of Varric's armor. The prince gasped. His plasma blade fell from his fingers and clattered on the stone floor. He looked down at the weapons buried in his chest, then up at the human who had put them there. How? He whispered. You are just a human. Ethan met his eyes. That is exactly why. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We fight for each other. We fight for the people we love. And we never stop. No matter how strong you are. No matter how much you hurt us. We get back up and we keep fighting. Because that is what humans do. Varric's legs gave out. He collapsed to the arena floor, his blood pooling around him. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the cheering began. Not from everyone, but from enough. The loyalists who had waited for this moment. The citizens who were tired of war. The people of both worlds who dared to hope for something better. Kira descended from the platform and walked across the arena to where Ethan stood. She looked at his wound, at the blood soaking his suit. Tears filled her eyes. You impossible, wonderful fool, she said. Ethan laughed despite the pain. Is that how you talk to your champion? She kissed him. Right there, in front of the entire Dominion. In front of the Terran delegation. In front of everyone. And in that kiss was everything they had been through, and everything they would face together. 1 month later, Empress Kira of the Valari Dominion was crowned in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace. Beside her stood her consort, Ambassador Ethan Cole, the human who had fought for her throne. The peace treaty was renegotiated. This time, both sides meant it. Trade routes opened between Valari and human space. Cultural exchanges began. Slowly, two peoples who had spent 20 years trying to destroy each other started learning from each other instead. It was not easy. There were those on both sides who did not want peace, who held on to their hatred, who could not let go of the past. But Kira and Ethan faced them together. As partners, as leaders, as husband and wife. On quiet evenings in the Imperial Palace, when the work was done and they could finally rest, Kira would sometimes ask Ethan if he regretted how they had begun. A forced marriage. A political arrangement. No choice in the matter. His answer was always the same. Never. Because it led me to you. And Kira, the woman who had been overlooked her entire life, who had single-handedly changed the fate of 2 civilizations, would smile and lean into his embrace. They had been forced together by circumstance. They had chosen to stay together by love. And in doing so, they had proven something that both their peoples would remember for generations. Humans, when pushed, will always rise to meet the challenge. They will fight for what matters. They will protect the people they love. And sometimes, in the most unexpected places, they will find exactly what they need. That was the lesson of Commander Ethan Cole and Empress Kira. That was their gift to both their peoples. And that was how 2 civilizations learned to live in peace.